Today I'm checking out the John Mayer Silver Sky Paul Reed Smith guitar that isn't a Strat but is a Strat. We'll talk about that. So what I'd like to do first is just go over some of the features of the guitar. There's a lot of interesting features on the guitar. One thing that I really do appreciate about this guitar, when looking at tons and tons of online sites where these were for sale that show the weight, you see that they're very consistently in the 7-pound range, which was really nice, not too heavy. One of my complaints about Suhr guitars is that they're really heavy, and I like to look at these guitars as being high-end alternatives to Fenders. These kind of Silver Skies, the Suhrs. You know, there's a ton of these guitars out now that if you want to buy something like a McMill or something like that, something that's just more high-end than Fender, and maybe not buy into the Fender custom shop, you know, these are the options that are out there. This was really interesting because, like I said, out of all of them, this seemed to be the most consistent and the lightest. So I thought that was one of the features that kind of drew me to it. A lot of the ideas on the guitar are really interesting, and then some are kind of strange, and I think it's a personal preference. Overall, I really like the guitar because of two reasons, and they're probably the most important reasons. It plays great and it sounds great. Other than that, there's a couple things I don't really understand about the guitar, and I want to talk about those because I think if you're looking at buying this guitar, you're probably like me, you're going to have to do it without getting your hands on one first. So that is what I want to talk about, is some of the things you might expect that are negative and positive on the guitar. So hopefully that if you click an online purchase and you have it sent to your home, maybe you won't be so shocked. So we'll start at the back of the guitar and work our way all the way to the headstock, going over the features. The first thing I want to talk about is the bridge. The bridge is a typical kind of Fender style bridge, although, you know, Paul Reed Smith puts a spin on it that it's, you know, a little different. There is a push-in tremolo arm, which I thought was really cool. One of the things that I didn't like about the tremolo arm was the positioning of it. It was like an L. It didn't really feel right. So I put mine in a vise and bent it just a little bit, and that made a huge improvement for me. A lot of players aren't going to have that problem, but I feel like when I inserted it in the bridge and pushed it all the way down, it was either really too close to the body for me to use, or if I lifted it up, I felt like it was just really high off the guitar. It was a really strange position for me. I had to adjust the action when I first got the guitar. The action was a little high for me, so I lowered it. The neck was bone straight, so all I did was just lower the saddles and it dialed in perfectly. In fact, it probably took me less than 5 minutes to make this guitar go from good to great. Next to the knobs, these are a little smoother. They look fantastic. In fact, the upgrades to do the switch tip in the knobs I think are a vast improvement to the way traditional Strats look. It looks great. I can see why they did it for aesthetics. I mean, just looking at it, you think, oh man, this is what you want. But I actually like the feel of the traditional ones better. I didn't change them because I like them so much. It's form over function. I just like the way they look, so I can see why they chose it too. Now, when we get to the pickups, there's no complaints, period. When I immediately got this guitar, I A-B'd it to every Strat I have. And I have custom shops and Fender American Strats and Mexican Strats and all kinds of off-brand Strats. There was nothing I had in my, that I could compare this to that the pickups did not sound as good as this. These were amazing. These pickups were louder, voluminous, if that's even a word. If it's not, we're going to Wikipedia it right now. They had a lot of volume, a lot of fullness. They sounded bright and clear. They're some of the best Strat pickups ever. I could definitely see why PRS is not going to sell these pickups, because if they did, I think a lot of us players would buy them, and that's great, but maybe not push you towards buying their guitar. And let's be honest, they're in the guitar sales business, not in the pickup business. Now we gotta talk about the sounds, so let's get into that. We're gonna go ahead and go to the bridge position. Very bright, chimey. For me, I like a quarter turn back on the tone control. Then you have the next position, which is position 2. And you can already tell it kind of warmed up, and that's because I already have my other tone knob quarter turned back. So let me roll it forward. And like I said, I kind of just with this guitar instinctively quarter turn roll the tone knobs back. Middle position, okay? And what I'll do is I'll roll all the controls forward again so you have an idea. Middle position. But of course, nothing is gonna beat the neck and middle position. let's be honest, if you're buying this guitar and you're a John Mayer fan, this is where you're gonna stay most of the time, and it does not disappoint. In fact, it's really where I live on this guitar. One of the things I like to do is a slap technique. I'm a bass player and I like to use that technique on the guitar a lot, so this tone is perfect for what I do. If you like that technique and are curious about it, you can click right here. I did a video on how do I do that, and I thought that'd be fun. I didn't want to make this video and not show you guys that technique. Last, we're gonna have the neck position, and it does not disappoint. This is something a lot of people didn't notice, but right here, this is painted white. It maybe looks like the light is hitting the silver and makes it light colored, but it's actually spray painted white or sprayed white. I think it's cool, it's different, you know what I mean? I mean, when you're taking your attempt at a guitar that's been done to death, you know, anything you can do to kind of make it your own is important. The back of the guitar has a couple things I like, which is I'd like that there's no back plate here. Now, some of you players really hate that. You like having the plates. For me, I like to change the strings often, and the plate is always a nuisance, and so I just leave them off. So I kind of like it just being open like this. I'm sure if you wanted to add a plate, you could, but I like it open. One of the things I thought was weird was that they soldered the ground wire to the center point on the claw. And that's only interesting because sometimes when I'm changing strings, like if you go to 9s, I have 10s on this, you may want to take one of these springs out and go to 3 springs, and that's going to be a little different. I don't know if that's a problem, but be aware that's something strange. Otherwise, you're going to have to just loosen the screws here. One thing I will tell you this is that what they got right is adjusting these screws with the screwdriver. It was really, really nice because it felt so smooth and easy. It was effortless, unlike a lot of my Fender style guitars. The neck bolt system is pretty traditional. I've played a lot of the bolt-on PRSs in the past and it felt great. The neck, now we're to the neck, the controversial neck. So the neck carve, or the way the back of the neck feels fantastic. It feels like an American professional Stratocaster. In other words, not too thick like a 50s neck, but not thin like a 60s neck. It's right in the middle. It's in the sweet spot. This is definitely where I would consider the neck to be perfect. Not a pattern, if you're familiar with PRS, it's not a pattern regular, but not a pattern thin either. Something in between. Very, very nice neck. The issue, of course, is this 7¼ inch radius fretboard. Are you going to have a problem with that? I don't prefer it. It's one of those things where I honestly can tell you the sound and the playability of the guitar. The guitar plays great, it sounds great, so I've just overlooked the 7¼ inch radius fretboard. I like it, obviously, but I would definitely prefer the 10-inch radius PRS, and I would have really preferred a version of this. One thing I thought was interesting is in the 80s, when Ibanez made the Steve Vai Jim guitar, at the same time they released the RG550. The idea was, here's the Steve Vai artist guitar, and then here's a guitar that's like it, but you don't have to have the artist name, and there's some feature changes, and I thought they were interesting. One of the things I thought would be a really cool thing for PRS to do is to make a version of this guitar that is like that. It's inspired by the John Mayer Silver Sky, but a little bit more pedestrian. In other words, maybe the traditional neck carve, maybe the traditional tuning key style, maybe some more traditional bridge features, maybe more PRS than this guitar is. And, you know, and then they could work out the deal with John Mayer. But I think that'd be a really cool option because I love John Mayer. I'm just a John Mayer fan. I love PRS, and I love Strats. Those are 3 things. So this guitar seems like the culmination of all that. But this guitar is definitely a little bit more John Mayer than I would prefer. And what I mean by that is I can see why personally he made these decisions, but I like the guitar. I like the idea that I have this an S-style guitar that I like from PRS, but I don't necessarily need it to be very John Mayer-like. So I'd like to see another version. I would actually probably end up owning both versions though, so you know, just because there's something magical about this guitar. John did know what he was doing, well, obviously, when he did this. Okay, so after we get to the 7¼ inch radius fretboard, we're going to talk about the bone nut, That's, of course, is a perfect choice. I think that's fantastic. And then there's a truss rod cover, and here's where something, this is kind of silly, but it looks like a dog tag, and I thought they missed an opportunity to kind of stamp something in there. They really should have done that. And the reason I thought about that is, if you ever looked at the first John Mayer Fender edition guitars, and they had those special gig bags, there was this kind of army kind of vibe to it. And I thought, when I saw this, I thought, oh, that looks like a little dog tag, and it's aluminum or it's metal, and I think it'd be cool if they stamped something in there, maybe, you know, Silver Sky or SK, you know, whatever, or 1 or 11 or whatever the number they want. Maybe the year, you know, SK 19. I just think that's an opportunity they could do that. It would be really cool. So not a big deal, of course, but, you know, when you're looking at stuff, you kind of think of that. I like that they put the matching nickel locks. I actually prefer these over the typical black ones you get with Pure S. Although it's funny, when I mentioned that to one of my close friends, the first thing he said was the opposite. He liked the black ones over the chrome ones, but I prefer them. The tuning keys, which are Kluson style keys, tune fantastically. They feel great. They're perfect in the way that they kind of move. I have no complaints. The tuning keys obviously are they're gray, and I think it's to match kind of the aesthetics of maybe this plate and stuff. The plastic's cool. You know, I don't have a huge opinion about it. It's just a plastic tuning key. It comes with a gig bag, so you know, that's another thing to note. It comes with a gig bag, and if you're into gig bags, it's just a gig bag. If you're into cases, I think you're gonna be a little disappointed. It's just a standard gig bag. Just keep in mind that when John Mayer was with Fender, he had a gig bag as well. The gig bag with Fender was a little nicer. It was a little more decked out. The gig bag that PRS gives you is a very nice gig bag. I mean, it's as nice as a gig bag as you're gonna want, but I know a lot of you like cases, so just be aware it doesn't come with a case. Me, that's perfect for me. I don't like cases, so it all works out. We're gonna get some overdrive. And you can hear it's kind of bright. So again, turning that tone control just a quarter turn back. I'm not a single coil bridge fan. I'm just not. So we'll see if I end up keeping the pickup in it. We'll see. But if I do change it, I promise to make a video. Now we'll go to the next position. Full. It definitely has a humbucker kind of vibe to it. Like I said, the true star of this show is these pickups. Of course the guitar plays great. I don't think you would buy a $2,000 American PRS guitar in any form or shape and not expect it to play well. That's what PRS kind of prides itself on, is its performance. But does it sound great? And it does. This is a Strat style guitar that if you want that tone, let's be honest, John Mayer is a guy who's been dialing in a great tone for Strats for years. And Paul Reed Smith knows how to build guitars. It just makes sense these two guys could make a decent guitar together. Let's go to the middle position. And of course, now we're going to do the neck and middle. And now we're going to have that neck pickup. Here we go. There's just something about this shape and form, which is probably why John Mayer wanted PRS to make something like this. Let's be honest, if you play this shape of guitar, it's very personal in the way that it feels. It feels very close and very comfortable, and so you kind of go towards it. All right, guys, as always, I want to thank you for spending the time watching the video. Until the next time, know your gear.